This year, I wanted it to be different. Not perfect. God knows our family has never been good at perfection, but softer, warmer, the kind of moment that lingers in your memory like sunlight through curtains. For weeks, I planned every detail. Fresh flowers from a local florist instead of some generic grocery store bouquet. Her favorite perfume, the one she wore when I was a kid and still called me sweetheart in front of people, and a handwritten letter, not just some Hallmark card platitude, but something real, honest, raw. I spent hours on that letter, rewriting sentences until my hand was cramped, trying to capture everything. How much she meant to me, how hard it had been for both of us, and how I still loved her even when it felt like she didn't want me around anymore. Then, 2 days before the brunch, she called. Her tone was lighter than usual, almost playful, and when she texted later with an old-school smiley face, a colon and parenthesis, it hit me like a freight train. That tiny symbol took me back to middle school, to evenings where we sat together watching bad TV shows or baking cookies that burned because neither of us could follow recipes. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was hope. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe we could find our way back to each other, even if only for a few hours over mimosas and pancakes. But life has a cruel sense of humor. The day before the brunch, as I carefully arranged the gifts on my kitchen counter, disaster struck. I knocked over the perfume bottle. The glass shattered against the floor, and the scent filled the air, sharp and suffocating. Panic surged through me. This wasn't just any perfume. It was her perfume, the one thing I knew would make her smile. There was no time to waste. I raced across town to another store, skipping an important work meeting along the way. Each mile felt heavier than the last, the pressure building like storm clouds overhead. By the time I returned home, clutching the replacement box, I was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally drained. Was all this effort worth it? Would she even notice? Doubt crept in, whispering cruel truths I tried to ignore. But I pushed forward anyway, clinging to the fragile thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, this brunch could change everything. When my mom had me, she was barely out of high school. For years, it was just the two of us. Messy, chaotic, but close in a way I didn't fully appreciate until it slipped away. She worked double shifts at a diner while I stayed home with takeout menus and reruns of sitcoms. We weren't perfect, but we were ours. Then, when I turned 10, Jake came into our lives. A quiet man who liked things clean, orderly, and ideal. At first, I thought he might be okay. He brought stability, structure, the kind of life my mom always said she wanted for herself. But as time passed, I realized his version of perfection didn't include someone like me. It started small, my name disappearing from chore charts, photos on the walls showing only him, Mom, and later Zach, their newborn son. I wasn't invited to pose for family portraits anymore. Apparently, I wasn't photogenic enough or maybe too inconvenient to fit into their shiny new narrative. When Zach was born, everything shifted again. Suddenly, I wasn't her son so much as a shadow of her past. An awkward reminder of nights spent crying over bills and days when diapers felt like luxuries. Jake never outright rejected me, but his silence spoke louder than words. He referred to Zach as our boy during dinner conversations about little league games and college funds, yet rarely acknowledged my existence unless someone else asked directly. I tried to hold on, to prove I still belonged. I helped financially whenever I could, covering utility bills, chipping in for holidays, even helping Jake secure contracts through connections I'd built over years of networking. Each act felt like throwing rope down a well, hoping to hear an echo, but there was only silence. Still, I kept showing up because part of me believed if I gave enough, they'd see me again, not as a paycheck, but as family. But no matter what I did, the distance grew. One day, standing in front of a framed canvas that read, "Family is everything," I stared at the faces smiling back at me, faces that weren't mine. The realization hit hard. This wasn't my family anymore. They'd moved on without realizing, or caring, that I'd been left behind. When I handed over the red envelope during brunch, I expected something. A flicker of recognition, maybe even a smile. Instead, my mom glanced at it like it was an unfamiliar bill she didn't remember authorizing. Zach, sitting across from me, smirked before chiming in with his usual charm. "Wait, you wrote her a love letter or something?" Jesus. He grabbed the envelope out of her hands before she could react, holding it up as if it were evidence of some cosmic joke. Then, In that mocking tone I'd come to dread, he read aloud fragments of what I'd written, words meant for her eyes only, now paraded around like cheap entertainment. "I know things haven't always been easy," he mimicked, exaggerating my voice into a caricature. "Oh wow, deep stuff here." The table erupted in laughter, not warm or kind, but sharp-edged chuckles that sliced right through me. My mom said nothing, just quietly retrieved the envelope and placed it aside without so much as looking at me. It wasn't anger on her face. It was indifference, the kind that settles heavy in your chest and refuses to leave. After brunch, while clearing plates, I noticed the trash bags already stacked by the garage door. Something gnawed at me, a quiet unease I couldn't shake. I stepped outside, sunlight streaming harshly onto the black trash bags piled near the wall. And there it was, my perfume box crushed under other debris, the flowers bent sideways like they'd been shoved carelessly inside. The red envelope sat atop everything, still sealed, glaring back at me like an accusation. For a moment, I froze. The air felt thick, suffocating, as though the weight of years pressed down all at once. This wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. Everything I'd poured myself into, every attempt to bridge the gap between us, discarded without thought. I crouched down, reaching into the bag, pulling out the remnants of my effort. Each item felt heavier than it should, laden with meaning I couldn't unsee. Without saying goodbye, I walked back to my car, clutching the bag like it held pieces of a broken mirror reflecting who I used to be. That night, I sat in my dimly lit apartment, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen. The silence around me felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the walls were closing in with every passing second. But I didn't hesitate. I opened a new email and typed out the subject line, Mother's Day. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before they started moving, slow, deliberate, cold. "Just a heads up," I began. I tucked an envelope of cash inside the letter I gave you. It was meant to go toward Zach's tuition. I figured you'd know what to do with it. Hope it didn't get lost. The words felt sharp, cutting even to me, but there was no room for softness anymore. I hit send without rereading it, knowing full well that this single act would shatter whatever fragile illusion of normalcy they had left. Then I turned off my laptop, poured myself a glass of water, and sat in silence. For hours, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing by outside. By morning, the storm began. My phone buzzed relentlessly, texts, missed calls, voicemails piling up like bricks in a wall I wasn't ready to climb. At first, it was my mom, her messages growing increasingly frantic. "Wait, what do you mean cash? I didn't see any envelope inside. Are you serious? Oh my God, how much was in there? I'll look right now." Each message felt like a desperate attempt to undo what couldn't be undone. But then came Jake. His text landed like a punch to the gut. "Who do you think you are, pulling stunts like some corporate boss playing mind games? You want to mess with our lives, fine. But let me make one thing clear. I'm not letting this slide. I'll take whatever steps I need to fix this." Reading those words, something inside me snapped, not out of fear, but clarity. This wasn't about family or loyalty. It never had been. To them, I wasn't a son or a stepson. I was a walking ATM, a name attached to checks and utility bills. And now, when I finally stopped paying, their true colors bled through. I stared at Jake's threat for a long time, my hands trembling slightly. Then I set the phone down, silenced it, and walked to the window. Outside, the city buzzed with life, people rushing to work, cars honking, sunlight streaming through the cracks between buildings. None of it mattered. All I could think about was how predictable their reactions were. They weren't worried about Zach's future or my feelings. They were terrified of losing control. And for the first time, I realized how powerful it felt to take that control away. The morning after I sent the email, chaos erupted in their lives and mine. My phone buzzed incessantly, each notification a new layer of panic from my mom and Jake. "Wait, what do you mean cash? I didn't see any envelope inside. Are you serious? Oh my God, how much was in there? I'll look right now." Her texts came in rapid-fire succession, like she was trying to outrun her own guilt. Meanwhile, Jake's tone shifted from condescending to desperate. "You're being childish. This is a serious situation. Can you just tell us if you're lying?" His words dripped with frustration, but beneath it all, I could hear the tremor of fear. the kind that comes when you realize you've lost something irreplaceable. They tore through the trash bags, frantic and disorganized. I imagined them digging through coffee grounds, eggshells, and crumpled receipts, searching for the red envelope they had so carelessly discarded. Their desperation wasn't about me. It was about what I represented: money, stability, connections. To them, I wasn't family. I was a resource they took for granted until it was too late. And now, faced with the possibility that they had thrown away not just gifts but opportunities, they were unraveling. But the unraveling didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I systematically dismantled every thread of support I'd woven into their lives. First, I canceled the automatic payments on utilities I'd been covering quietly for years. Then, I withdrew the tuition assistance I'd promised for Zach's upcoming semester. The final blow came when I reached out to the professional contacts I'd introduced to Jake: vendors, clients, referral sources, and politely requested they no longer associate my name with him. It wasn't dramatic or vindictive, just a quiet withdrawal of goodwill. Within weeks, Jake's business began to crumble. Contracts paused, partnerships dissolved, and his once stable income stream dried up. One afternoon, as I sat at a cafe nursing a cup of coffee, Zach walked in. He looked nothing like the smug teenager who had mocked me at brunch months ago. His hair was unkempt, his eyes bloodshot and shadowed by dark circles. When he spotted me, his expression turned venomous. "This is your fault," he spat, slamming his hand on the table. "Because of your selfishness, I'm losing everything. Do you even know Mom's been crying herself to sleep every night? You ruined our lives." For a moment, I said nothing. I let his words hang in the air, sharp and accusing, while the cafe buzzed around us. Then, I leaned forward, meeting his gaze head-on. "If you really want to understand," I said, my voice steady and calm, "ask Mom how many times she's checked on me in the last decade. Ask her why she never noticed when I stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped trying. Ask her why I felt like an outsider in my own home long before this." Zach opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. His anger faltered, replaced by confusion, or maybe guilt. He stood there for a moment, staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then, without another word, he turned and left, leaving behind the faint scent of stale coffee and regret. The day my mom showed up at my office, I wasn't prepared. But then again, when are you ever prepared for someone trying to weaponize your own kindness against you? She walked in unannounced, her cream blazer sharp and professional, heels clicking like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. The receptionist buzzed me with an urgency that suggested fire drills or emergencies. When I stepped downstairs, she was already pacing near the front doors, clutching a thick folder labeled neatly in black marker: "Family Records." "We need to talk," she said without preamble, her voice clipped but trembling beneath the surface. We stepped outside, away from prying eyes, and she wasted no time laying out her case. "You've humiliated this family," she began, her tone accusatory. "Jake's job is on the line because of you. Zach's tuition isn't paid. Do you even understand what you're doing?" Then she opened the folder, a catalog of every favor, every payment, every connection I'd ever provided. Utility bills I'd covered, tuition payments I'd promised, client introductions I'd arranged for Jake. Each item was documented meticulously, as if she'd been waiting years to remind me how much I owed them. "You think this gives you the right to walk away?" she demanded, slamming the folder shut. "After everything we've done for you, clothes, food, school, you just throw it all back in our faces?" I stared at her, letting the weight of her words settle between us. Then I asked, my voice calm but cutting, "Why did you keep all this? To remind me I'm indebted to you? Or to prove that I've always been disposable?" Her face froze, the color draining slightly as though I'd struck a nerve she didn't know existed. For the first time, I saw cracks in her armor. The same armor she'd worn while dismissing my gifts, ignoring my presence, erasing me piece by piece over the years. "This isn't about gratitude," I continued, stepping closer. "It's about control. You wanted me around only when it was convenient, only when I could pay the bills or make Jake look good. But when it came to actually seeing me, as your son, you couldn't be bothered." She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Her usual composure crumbled under the truth she'd spent years avoiding. Finally, she whispered, "You're punishing us." "No," I said firmly. "I'm setting boundaries." And if Jake loses his job because he can't stand on his own, that's not my problem anymore. By the time I turned and walked back inside, the folder lay forgotten on the ground. That night, I blocked their numbers, every single one. No more calls, no more texts, no more performances. Silence became my shield, and for the first time in years, I felt untethered. The fallout was swift and brutal. Jake, once the epitome of confidence, now stumbled through his days like a man caught in quicksand. His business unraveled faster than anyone expected. Clients pulled out, contracts dissolved, and the referrals I had quietly arranged for him over the years dried up completely. It wasn't revenge. It was simply the natural consequence of removing the foundation he'd unknowingly built on my support. By the end of the month, he was asked to resign, though they called it restructuring. Meanwhile, Zach's tuition payments went unpaid, forcing him to defer his studies indefinitely. The brother who once mocked me for being half family now posted cryptic Instagram stories about betrayal and abandonment, tagging mutual friends as if hoping someone would intervene. But the most telling moment came weeks later when my mom sent a single text. "Saw you moved. Hope you're doing well. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Her words were careful, almost rehearsed, but they lacked any real acknowledgement of what had happened. No apology for discarding my gifts, no admission of guilt for years of neglect. Just an open-ended offer, as if testing whether the door I'd closed could be pushed open again. But I knew better. That door wasn't just locked, it was gone. One evening, sitting on my balcony overlooking the city lights, I opened my laptop and began typing. I wrote everything down. The brunch, the trash bag, the red envelope, the slow unraveling of their lives after I stepped away. I titled the post, "When Silence Speaks Louder Than Words," emphasizing that sometimes walking away isn't cruel, it's necessary. I hit publish without hesitation, knowing this story needed to exist, not just for me, but for others who might see themselves in it. Within hours, the blog went viral. Thousands of shares, comments flooding in from strangers across the globe. Some praised my courage, others questioned my methods, but one comment stood out. "I've been where you were, but I never had the strength to do what you did. Thank you for showing me that letting go can be freedom." Those words stayed with me long after I closed my laptop. Looking back, I don't regret my choices. Yes, I lied about the cash. It was a calculated move designed to make them confront their own greed. But beyond that lie lay a deeper truth. I stopped carrying the weight of a family that had discarded me years ago. In silence, I found clarity. And in the distance, I discovered peace. This story isn't just about a family falling apart. It's about the invisible lines we draw between love and obligation, loyalty and self-preservation. As I sat on my balcony months later, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and white, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led me here. Was I too harsh? Did I cross a line by lying about the cash? Maybe. But the truth is, no amount of honesty would have made them see me. Not really. For years, I had been screaming into a void, hoping someone would hear me. Instead, they handed me silence wrapped in indifference, packaged neatly inside jokes at brunch tables and forgotten birthdays. What hurt most wasn't their rejection. It was how predictable it felt. The moment I saw my gifts stuffed into that trash bag, something inside me hardened. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. They hadn't treated me like family for years, yet they expected me to keep showing up, keep paying, keep forgiving. And when I stopped, they acted as if I was the one who betrayed them. That hypocrisy, the sheer audacity of it, still makes my chest tighten. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. Yes, I lied about the money, but that lie wasn't malicious. It was strategic. It forced them to confront the consequences of their actions, to feel the weight of discarding someone who had given so much. Would they have listened otherwise? No. People only change when they're uncomfortable, and sometimes discomfort needs to be loud before it can be heard. But perhaps the hardest realization was this. I didn't destroy the bridge connecting us. It was already broken long before I walked away. All those years, I thought I was holding it together, keeping the pieces from crumbling. In reality, I was the one carrying all the weight while they stood safely on the other side, oblivious to the cracks beneath their feet. When I finally let go, it wasn't destruction, it was relief. In the silence that followed, I found freedom. Freedom from their expectations, their guilt trips, their endless demands. For the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling like I owed someone something. And maybe that's the lesson here. Sometimes, walking away isn't cruel. It's necessary. Sometimes, setting boundaries means choosing yourself over the illusion of belonging. So what do you think? Was I justified? Or should I have stayed quieter, swallowed the pain, and kept pretending everything was fine? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how others see it. If stories like this resonate with you, ones about boundaries, betrayal, and reclaiming your power, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.